This is the Power Break Podcast number 275, titled The Power of Gratitude. Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Brubaker, along with JT, as we hope you'll stay tuned as we seek to give you a little power in this break to help you succeed in the race of life.
This is the Power Break Podcast with a focus on the spiritual, the mental, and the physical aspects, all to help you succeed in the race of life. For show notes from today's podcast, go to bobbrubaker.com and follow the link for the Power Break Podcast. Bob, I love the title. Is it got anything to do with your book?
No, actually, it doesn't. I took a totally different approach when I wrote this article, which, of course, we're talking about today.
Oh, so good,
but it's
man.
still, I mean, when you talk about gratitude, there's a lot of things that overlap of things I said before, but there's also new research about the benefits of gratitude. So some of those things we bring out in the article today as we talk about the power of gratitude. Are you grateful today? I mean, this is a season to be grateful. What are you grateful for? Yeah, what are you grateful for, JD?
You know, I'm grateful first and foremost for my health, my family, obviously my friends. I'm grateful for Christ, obviously. That should have probably been the first one listed. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at life through the right perspective, you can't help but get gratitude out of the whole thing. So, yeah, how about you? What are you grateful for?
Well, I'm very thankful that, when we come around Thanksgiving, it was 50 years ago on Thanksgiving Eve that I proposed to Janet Lynn Dilley.
No way, really? I had no idea, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm very grateful for my mate of nearly 50 years that we'll celebrate next summer. And, of course, I am very grateful. I love serving the church that I do, Christ Community Presbyterian Church in Clearwater, and I'm very thankful for them. And recently we had a day of prayer on a Saturday from 9 to noon, and just most of that day of prayer was just consumed with thanksgiving to God. What a highlight. So good. You know, it says in the book of Psalm 100 to enter his gates with thanksgiving and be thankful unto him. So anyway, being thankful, and I think that's the way we start out as we talk about the power of gratitude today. Before we go any further, though, JT, we are grateful, you and I, grateful for everyone who listens to the Power Break podcast, and thankful for those ratings and reviews that they leave there wherever they download the podcast. Thankful for the fact that many people spread the word about the Power Break podcast. Faithful listeners let us know from time to time, so shout out to all of you. We thank you very much.
Yeah, it's always so good. It's always so humbling. I definitely want to throw a shout out to our friend Keith Bowling. He's been doing some really good work as far as crime prevention there in the city of Largo, and I'm just so grateful that he's still just knocking it out of the park. I think that's really cool. But yeah, to all of our
Keith,
listeners,
way to go.
Yeah, man, Keith is just getting it done. But I'm always thankful to all of our listeners and grateful. And if you could get on wherever you've downloaded the podcast and give us a 5-star review, it just helps other people find it. And I certainly would be grateful for that 5-star review. How about you, buddy?
Yeah, we sure would. Even though, in some aspects, we want to be humble about it and say, we really don't deserve a 5-star rating. But that's how the system works, folks.
It is, for sure. Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's shout out to Driftwood Coffee. Thanks for the coffee. Boy, I had some Driftwood Coffee this morning. It is really good, as it always is. And Driftwood Coffee helps us by providing coffee for us. Keeps JT and I in the coffee mode. And you can find Driftwood Coffee online at driftwoodcavacoffeecafe.com. If you want to find that link, it's in the show notes when you go to bobbrubaker.com. But just think about it. Driftwood Coffee.
Yeah, so good, man. I had some this morning as well. I'm just grateful that, they were able to give us some coffee and, kind of spread that holiday cheer, man, because who doesn't like a good cup of coffee? I think I'm on my second at this particular moment. So, yeah, good stuff.
It's hard not to have more than one. So anyway, folks, we were talking today about the power of gratitude. So, JT, I know we kind of hinted at it before, but what does that title bring up to your mind besides the book that is on my website?
Well, I'm just always grateful for so many things, and the thing I like about gratitude is that it's a constant reminder of what's been given and what has been given without you having to earn it or deserve it. And I think that's the coolest thing about gratitude for me. It's just, it keeps you from getting into those downward spirals that we all have a tendency to get into. It keeps us from staying trapped in one spot. And it keeps us moving forward. So that's what pops into my mind about gratitude is how good of a tool it is for us to wield as far as keeping ourselves going in the right direction. And of course, I think about your book because your book is pretty awesome too.
There you go. It's interesting. When you think about gratitude, expressing gratitude, this is one reason why people do not express gratitude, because as soon as you express gratitude, you are admitting that you had a lack, and people don't want to admit that. They try to hide from that, so they don't express gratitude. So when we talk about gratitude, this is, of course, what we're talking about today is not from the book that I wrote, as mentioned, Power of Gratitude, that you find at bobbrubaker.com. Actually, this is new stuff because there's more research that I've uncovered, and there's more research is, of course, being published all the time about the plethora of benefits found in just being grateful.
Man.
Well, God says that when he says, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called into one body, and be thankful.
Almost sounds like an order, Bob. Let's continue to talk more about that. But first, I want to encourage everybody to get over to bobbrubaker.com. I want to encourage you to, at the very least, sign up for the blog. It'll show up every Monday and get you started for your week. But I would also encourage you to check out the resources. Some great stuff. The Power of Gratitude is a book that was written by Bob. So that's also something that you could couple with this particular podcast and this particular article. And, it kind of adds like the new stuff to what Bob already wrote. But let's continue to talk more about the power of gratitude, because it really is the season for it, and it's really such an important part of our life.
Amen. Well, here we go. The power of gratitude, because I wrote in the article, the gratitude is an amazing gift from God when you think about it. It takes us from the doldrums to happiness. It gives us more optimism and positive emotions. It enhances our relationships. It even sets us on the road to better health, even healing, and the disruption of aches and pains. Gratitude will give you more alertness, determination, and even give you better sleep. And it sets you on the road to greater achievement. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So why aren't we more grateful? It says in the book of Jeremiah 17 that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? That's where we are. By nature, people are lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, etc. And it says in 2 Timothy chapter 3, and one of the things he says, they are ungrateful. Romans chapter 1 describes that also, that even though God's invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, are clearly perceived by everyone, well, they claim to be wise, but they're really darkened, and one of the things that comes out is they are ungrateful. As much as we would like to see gratitude, well, there's something in us that just refuses to realize the blessing of God and all that we have, and that we're totally undeserving of anything but his wrath, so we try to take credit in our minds and rob God of his glory by expressing ingratitude rather than gratitude. No wonder God commands us to be grateful, because gratitude is not an option, but it is a choice. So in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18, he says, give thanks in all circumstances, because this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Psalm 100 says, we enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. As I mentioned, Colossians 3 and verse 15 says, be thankful. The Bible's clear that we're to consider anything that we have as a gift from God, and we're to be thankful. So, JT, when you stop and think about it, God is actually giving us a command. Yep. Well, really all his commands, but especially the command to be thankful. It's good for us.
Well, as you were listing all the things that are positive benefits of being grateful, those are all things that people like seek medications for nowadays. You know, it's like
yeah. And that's
oh man, it's like, I just want to be happy, so they go on an antidepressant. I just want to be more optimistic, so they try to, exercise more and do all those things that are good. But the truth is it's our perspective that kind of governs how our body reacts to things. And it just goes back to the one thing that I have to always remind myself of. If God said it, I need to do it. And I don't need to understand why. Because a lot of people just are like, oh, that's hokey and that's not going to, that's how can your perspective change your health? It's like, well, there's a ton of research that says that's exactly what it does. So, man, good stuff.
Yeah, even so much so it changes the neurotransmitters in your brain, and so that you actually think better and are more alert and everything else. Isn't that amazing? Just by expressing gratitude.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. But God ordered it. I shouldn't be shocked. I should just do it, right? I think that's probably where Nike got that, the just do it thing. Yeah,
I don't know, but maybe they robbed it from the Bible. Anyway, if we take an assessment of all that we have and realize that it was not us but God who provided all things, then we look beyond ourselves to our provider and give thanks. That's why we're instructed to continue in prayer, but also to watch and notice everything that God provides and be ready with plenty of thanksgiving, as it says in Colossians 4. Well, taking recognition of God's provision is to recognize a lack, and that may be why you notice that somehow the provision has just to fill the void. And anyway, people get into this and say they don't want to admit they ever had a lack, and so that's wrong, because Philippians chapter 4 says, "My God will supply all your needs according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus." So God has given us every reason to be grateful. He has commanded us to be grateful, and he's allowed researchers in all aspects of life today to see the vast benefits that are even there for just being grateful. So the next step in your application of this knowledge is, will you apply yourself to be a grateful person? Of course, keep in mind that we must ward off the internal tendency to resist God in any state and be ungrateful. And we must also understand that we have that desire to claim things for ourselves, and that's called pride. But persevering brings benefits. And you might say discipline does make the difference in all aspects of life. But if you begin with a list of as many things you can and write them down of things for which you're grateful. If you actually wrote down at least 3 things every day, even before you go to bed at night, many people practice this. They practice a gratitude list when they get up and then practice a gratitude list before they go to bed. Helps them sleep better, and it sets the day off in a really good, positive way. If you write down your list and express your list, it actually makes your brain work better for the day and helps you to sleep better at night.
Go figure. It really is common sense when you think about it. It's just people don't give it the credit for how powerful it really can be. And I don't know why. Is it just our natural tendency to doubt things, or if something seems too easy, then... and that actually brings me into another part of it. Sometimes it's not easy to be grateful. You really have to train yourself to get into that mindset, because it's way easier to become negative about something, especially if it's an obstacle that's standing in your way. It's really easy to have that old tape of, oh, man, look at what happened. Now the day's ruined. It's a lot easier to have that old tape running than... oh, man, look at what just popped in my way. Apparently, that's something that's meant to challenge me and make me better overall. So let me just see if I can tackle it. Like, that's a positive way of looking at it. And I think it's harder to do that. So maybe that's why people don't want to do it.
It's harder, and again, it comes back to a sense of pride. I can handle things myself, and so I don't give credit to God or anyone else for what's going on. But it's interesting, being grateful spills over in our relationships, and we're ready to thank people instead of complain about people.
Yeah, that's right.
It just really makes the day. So check it out, folks. The Power of Gratitude is the article that I wrote, is found at bobbrubaker.com.
So what's happening this week, Bob? Anything you want the listeners to know about?
Well, you would think I would offer the book called The Power of Gratitude, and instead I want to talk about the book, The Battle for the Mind, because it's really a mind game that we're playing with ourselves, right? And bringing our mind into subjection to Christ.
Right. That's right.
And that helps us to be grateful, and of course it's a disciplined process. So The Battle for the Mind is at bobbrubaker.com. Kick off your new year really well by taking that book and applying it, The Battle for the Mind. You'll find it at bobbrubaker.com. And while you're there, check out the sermon links to the sermons I preach here at Christ Community Presbyterian Church in Clearwater, Florida. It's all at bobbrubaker.com.
This, the Power Break Podcast. I'm JT along with Bob Brubaker, and this is time on the podcast for questions and answers. If you have a question for me or for Bob, feel free to email me at jt@bobbrubaker.com. And we'll get to answering your question on an upcoming Power Break podcast. All right, so from the spiritual side of life, are you ready for question number 1? All right,
I am.
Here we go. All right, so let's talk about the benefits from being grateful and why it's so hard to be grateful. We've already touched on it a little bit, but man, this is such an important thing to get straight.
Well, of course, the benefits, number one benefit is when you are grateful, you are pleasing God. If God has given us a command and we apply ourselves to do it, even if we're looking at another motivation or whatever, it is pleasing to God. So that's the first and foremost thing. But scientific studies have found that gratitude, let me just go over this list again. Gratitude equals greater happiness. Secondly, gratitude equals more optimism and positive emotions. It also brings new and lasting relationships. I mean, don't people like to be around a person that expresses gratitude more than a person that's griping and complaining all the time?
Oh, yeah. That's one of my main complaints with my kids. It's like, man, stop being so negative. I don't want to be around that.
Yeah. It's also proven to produce better health, more progress towards personal goals, fewer aches and pains, more alertness and determination, increased generosity and empathy, better sleep, and improved self-esteem. With no downside to practicing more gratitude, then why is it so hard? First thing is, of course, as I mentioned, it's a pride thing. So our ego gets in the way of being grateful. Our ego. I mean, it's
interesting.
We don't like to acknowledge what we have, especially that we have received it, rather than earn it. That's my ego that says, I deserve this or something else, instead of saying, God has provided it, or even somebody else. If you're at a restaurant, instead of expressing gratitude to the people that have helped you. No, we like to just think that we deserve that.
It's so, man, is it because we want people to think we're a victim, or we want people to think we're tougher than we are? Is it, I don't know. It's like so.
Probably, yeah.
So many conversations I've had, even at like a drive-through, like the first thing that the person starts with is, nobody showed up for work this morning, and man, this is a long shift and this. And I'm like, the whole time, I'm like, man, just give me my food so I can drive out of here. It's the almost like we want to impress each other with our misery. And I don't get that. Like, it doesn't make you cooler if, your day was harder than mine. Like, I don't even know if you could ever really realistically compare your day to somebody else, because you're not in their head. You don't know what's going on with them. Like, yeah, exactly. I just try to always tell my kids, I'm like, listen, man, you never know what somebody else is going through. So, you don't need to try to outcompete them with misery. That's for sure.
So a good practice would be, when you find somebody in that case, is try to make their day through gratitude. So anyway, the other thing is that gratitude reminds us that we lack something and that has been provided. And so we'd rather not to admit that we ever lacked anything. Yeah. So we just hide from it and just act like, well, that just happened, or I earned it, or whatever, instead of giving gratitude to God or anyone else. The bottom line is we have an inward rebellion against God, so that even if we have submitted to God, we like to play the card that says, I can make it without you.
Yikes.
Sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is sad, because dependence really does lead to independence, and that's a very hard concept for people to get. Question number 2 from the mental aspect, then. how can we mentally push ourselves to do what we need to do to be grateful? Like, how can we mentally get ourselves in the right mindset?
Well, kind of challenge anything that within that is ungrateful. Like when you don't feel grateful, say, why not? What's wrong? Why am I not grateful? I mean, to challenge yourself, that's a really good practice when you have any kind of negative emotion. Why is that? What has led me to do that? The old saying is, I know that's old, but it's pretty good. Motion produces emotion. So when you follow God's command to be grateful and allow the action to produce the feeling instead of waiting on the feeling to produce the action, you will find yourself to be grateful. God says, be grateful. Okay? And by the way, it says in 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 18, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. It says all circumstances.
Yep.
Not when you feel like it, not when things are just perfect. Give thanks in all circumstances, because this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you.
Yeah, looking around, it's pretty easy to see what you should be grateful for,
Yeah.
One of the things that I love, and you know what I have discussed over and over again, is how Jesus talked about things that we can easily look at, that we are easily surrounded by, that can remind us of who God is and why we should be grateful for what he's done. Like the lilies of the field and the birds of the air. He talked about how, God takes care of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he obviously cares about us more than them. So that's something in and of itself to be grateful for, because we were made and created by him in his image. So obviously, being his image bearers,
that's right.
We should be pretty grateful that he's provided the environment for us. He's provided all these things for us. And all you got to do, I would argue, I think that's partly, for me, I know that sun is really good for you going outside, but every time I go outside, I'm reminded about just how cool this world is that he created. Especially living up here in North Carolina, man. I got to tell you, this is God's country, as they say.
Yeah, when you look at, and just consider the sun, if we were any closer to the sun, we would be burned up. Any farther away, we'd be freezing to death. So just think about the perfection of God's creation, and he knew exactly what he's doing. And he uses that same in his providential care for his own, and it is just wonderful to think about. But you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong just saying, okay, why do I need to be great? Because God said so, period. Yeah. There are benefits that you'll enjoy, a plethora of benefits that even the more people study it, the more they uncover of the benefits. But the bottom line is, he said so. This is what he has commanded us to do, and it's good for us.
Man, yeah, so good, man. It's such good stuff. So let's turn to question number 3, to the physical side of life, as we always do. So how can gratitude improve our fitness? And man, people should really jump on this one, because everybody that I know, including you and me, who are athletes, are always looking for that physical advantage, right?
Yeah. Here it is, gratitude, right? And think about it. Just let's go look at the bottom line. Gratitude increases your self-esteem and your confidence. All right? No matter what kind of physical activity you're doing, you need to think better of yourself, to do what is right, you get a proper view of self, and you need confidence. All right? Some people try to pump themselves up. Well, how about just being grateful? That increases your confidence. All right? Secondly, gratitude improves your feelings of happiness. So I'm sure that if you're out there bench pressing, trying to make a new personal record, you're a whole lot better bench pressing when you feel happy than you feel sad.
Yeah,
right?
That's for sure. Yeah.
And so, people want to pump themselves up and say, I think I can, or whatever else. How about, God, thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you for the other. And next thing you know, you're feeling very confident and happy, and boom, you get a new PR.
It's a beautiful thing, man. It really is.
It also helps with goal attainment, just being grateful, grateful for the things that you've already experienced. And gratitude improves your your stress management, rather, and gratitude promotes physical health and improves performance. I got to tell you, I think I wrote in the book, The Power of Gratitude, the one that I published, about my experience in Kona, Hawaii, doing the Ironman triathlon. In 2000, I had the experience of being 5 miles from the turnaround, and I was having a pretty good race, and all of a sudden, my rear derailleur disintegrated.
It happens. Yep.
I mean, it just fell apart on the road, and there was, it had taken place over about a mile. I didn't realize what was going on, but I realized I couldn't shift gears, and I couldn't even go forward. And so I had to wait on the side of the road for technical support, for which I was extremely grateful, because otherwise I would have just been packing my bike and then going on home. So I had to wait for over an hour, and my heart rate went down, and I saw all the people that I passed me, and some others, and so I was going down the tubes. So I was just determined to give thanks for everything along the way. So as you're racing in Kona, there are these little purple flowers and yellow flowers that actually grow out of the lava field. It is beautiful.
Super cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I was thanking God for that, and I was thanking God for many, many things. And quite frankly, I just lost track of time, and I really wasn't concerned about my time. I was just getting in a good pace and thanking God. And next thing you know, I was back in Kona. I made the turnaround and went back to Kona to finish out the bike. And so anyway, then I tried to practice that on the run too. Ended up having a pretty decent time. It wasn't the greatest because I spent an hour on the side of the road. But nevertheless, when those guys did get there, the technical support, the word was just hand the bike to them and stand back. And I did. And I just was so grateful for their work and told them that. And that was what set me on the way. And of course, the day after the race, because I was sponsored by Spam, I took some Spam gear over to the mechanics at the bike shop.
Was it the maple Spam that you brought over there? Because that is truly delicious.
No. It was actually the Spam gear that I had access to as the Spam man.
It's so funny because that reminds me of the very first ride I ever did with you. You had a bright yellow bike with Spam all. I don't know if they were stickers.
Yeah,
that
was the Spam bike that I had Spam logos on that bike, and when I was sponsored by Spam, they made sure that happened. It was a good relationship and a fun relationship for which I'm very grateful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And as you mentioned, still bring out the can of Spam even with their new flavor. This is a non-sponsored endorsement here, but it's really good. The maple flavored Spam.
Oh man, yeah, it's so good. I think the whole because it's in a can, it kind of got a bad rap. But I got to tell you that it's cooked in the can, and that's what makes it delicious, man. So good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, folks, when you talk about working out, and again, another benefit of just disciplining yourself to be a grateful person, and it takes discipline to be grateful, but even when you're exercising, but it pays off in many ways. The point is, discipline does make the difference in all aspects of life. Check out today's show notes at bobbrubaker.com. Click on the Power Break podcast. Today is show number 275.
And submit your questions to JT at bobbrubaker.com, and we'll listen, or I'll listen, you'll listen, you can listen for our answer at an upcoming Power Break podcast. Wow, couldn't get that one out, buddy.
Quick word for The Battle for the Mind, the book that we're talking about today. Check it out at bobbrubaker.com. Click on the resources, go to the books, go through the books, you'll find it. The Battle for the Mind.
Well, thank you for joining us for the Power Break podcast. Please subscribe and leave a review wherever you've downloaded the podcast, and check out show notes, news, Bob's weekly blog, and other cool things at bobbrubaker.com. And listen next week for the Power Break podcast.